It's truly frightening.
This isn't a plan.
It's your home.
Oh man, I got this. Take one for me too, man. Yeah. Stop it!
What's up, Harbor Fiends? It's your boy, Ricky Van, aka Ricky Grimes. I am back with my boy, Joe the Psychologist. We are the three corners of horror minus one. GR is not here tonight. He'll be back next week. But we're not talking about next week. We are talking about now, this video. But I'm back here with my boy, Joe the Psychologist. How you doing, bro? It's been a minute.
It's been. Well, October's over. Boo. Wait, did I say that right? I did say it right.
Yeah.
It just rhymed in a weird way. But here we are in November, and we're going to still talk horror. In this episode, we are going to be discussing Violett, directed and written by Steven Mihaljevich, starring Georgia Ayers as Sonya, Sam Dudley as Stan, and Valentina Blagovich as Violett. A series of strange child disappearances have left the rural town of Miles in a state of disbelief. A sick mother, Sonya, fears unspeakable evil will soon snatch her 11-year-old daughter, Violett, from her sight.
This movie took a long time to get to the point, but I think there is a silver lining at the end of the tunnel. How they got there, though, let's talk about it. What did you think about this film, and where did you think it was heading?
Yeah, I'm, again, slow burns, same like you, a little preface it. It's not my, cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
However, if done right, we've discussed, the Night House. I mean, that's one of probably so far the best slow burns we've done. I'm trying to think of another one. So, you have your rarities. Hello, Oddity.
Well, this is something that you're a big fan of, Midsommar, Hereditary, which this reminded me a lot of Hereditary for some reason. Australia, right? This film?
It's Australia, yeah. It's from Australia. By the time we got to the midway point in this movie, I will say this. I already figured one thing out pretty early on. And it all had to do with a dinner scene. Because...
Was it in the beginning, the first dinner scene?
Yes.
I think I know where you're going because I picked up on that.
We're getting the whole story of this in this town. These kids are disappearing. Movies that had to deal with a person grieving, processing, having a loss, just by the way that she had looked. And then we get the second dinner scene, and I said, all right, Violett's dead. How did she die?
You never saw her.
You never saw her.
Never, yeah.
Well, and they were, because Sonya was in such grief, and I guess she had, her husband Stan did already once put her in a hospital. She didn't want to go back again. So it's something she had been grieving already, been trying to process. And, they have brought up the closure thing, that she's not going to move past it, until she gets closure. It took a little bit for you to realize that if you're not paying attention. But when you have the dinner scenes where there is a plate full of food, but no person sitting in that chair, and they're both just, Stan and Sonya are just barely talking to each other, I was like, Violett's dead. Yeah. So how are you going to tell me how Violett died? That's where I went. As soon as I figured that, I'm like, how are you going to, where are you going to go now with the story? Because obviously, Sonya was seeing things like I was, I don't know if it was the alcohol because Stan asked her, she'd been drinking again, or the mixture of the alcohol and whatever medication she was on. 'Cause she was tripping. I mean, she was seeing some fucked up shit. Which is where I give this movie some of the credit, where these little scare factors are shit that she's actually seeing. Fucking Sonya was tripping balls or something, because it was visual wise, I will say, it's another part also. Visual, it's a beautifully shot movie. I did a little research on the director. He's kind of known for like the different type of shots coming out of nowhere, the dialogue being a little hacked, I think it was something I had read.
He's a maverick, pretty much.
Yeah. So, it beautifully shot, but, again, when you do something that you want to have beautifully shot, the type of music you use, every shot is kind of a little bit slow, like, or where you're stuck in this moment, it makes the movie drag.
Yeah.
By the midway point, I had to get up from the sofa,
You need
make myself a
patience.
cup of coffee, and then with
Hey.
the rest of the time, I sat at the end of the sofa like this.
Brother, I had to watch this twice. I fell asleep the first
You-
time, man.
Well, I was dozing off, which is why I had to get up and do all
Don't
that.
watch this movie late, I'm gonna tell you.
Oh, I watched this in the afternoon also, so
Yeah. I love that your fact that you brought up the cinematography and the director. Yeah, you're right. It's a very sporadic and jarring style. He'll have images pop in and out and making little to no sense at times. But then, like I mentioned, as the film progresses, things do kind of make a little bit more sense. This kind of film, if you want to look at it this way, if you stick with it to the end, you are rewarded because this film is like a puzzle. The pieces are scattered throughout the film in every nook and cranny, and it's your job to find those pieces and put them together. And at the end, when it is over, you go back and those pieces all perfectly fit within each other, especially if you see it twice, as far as the imagery. And you mentioned her neighbors. I knew this was all in her head because there's no way she lives in that town. Miles Town, I think it was called.
yeah.
There's no way every single person that lives in that town, except for her and Stan, are complete caricatures of like loony people. There's no way everyone looks and acts like that. I knew that this was all in her head. And come on, she's basically the walking fucking dead. I mean, look, she was pale. She looked like she could just keel over at any time. She's the walking embodiment of depression, and that's what poor Sonya
Literally, the
was.
word was
bro.
so in my head. I'm like, remember the word depression? Yep.
Yeah, but then honestly, I was so annoyed. I'm like, oh my god, like I hate it when characters are having a conversation, but one party doesn't say anything. It's a one-way street when it comes to the dialogue. And I'm like, oh my god, just give us some exposition, something. Don't just say nothing. Then you realize this woman is catatonic essentially, both mentally and physically. And her past, if you look at those flashbacks to, especially when the shit she was drawing, again, the final scene, you put it together as a puzzle, like, oh yeah, I get that now. Because let's talk about the end, the twist. Let's talk about the twist. You ready for that?
Oh yeah.
Because I don't want to get too much into this without giving that part away. So if you haven't seen the rest of the film, turn away now.
Oh yeah.
But I'm gonna lead this to you, brother. Set it off.
All right. So as I said, Violett was dead.
Before we get into that, in case people hasn't watched it yet and they don't care, they rather hear us talk about it. This character, Sonya, has this fear of losing her child. There are multiple missing children reports that are, they're in the film narrative, but we don't know what's the likelihood of it being plausible and in reality. But even like if a neighbor comes in, she's suspicious of them. She don't want her daughter talking to nobody, so she doesn't want to lose her child essentially. So that's why she's all over the fucking place in this film. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a setup before you get into your point. Okay.
When Stan just basically knew that she needed closure on this, then he starts going into his memories of what happened. Then there was the camera that, Ed, the handyman, well, that's the other thing. So when Sonya was sitting there with Violett watching the cartoon, she was watching a German version of Snow White. One of the women that showed up to the house just so happens to show up with a basket of fruit. The same way so you started
and
saying,
you saw she was dressed too, just
like the hag and
Yeah.
so that's why the things were all there.
Yes.
It's you when you rewatched it, that's when the clarity came in. I had the clarity in there because again, it's just so random that some woman looking like the witch from Snow White would show up at the door and knock with fruit. So a lot of this stuff you knew weren't real. The painter guy, that painter guy was probably a pretty good scene.
What, you mean Long Legs? That's what he reminded me of.
Dude, that get me too. I thought about the same thing too. I thought about Long Legs.
Is that Nick Cage? I hated that character though. Oh my god, he was irritating. His speech pattern. Oh man, it drove me nuts.
Well, and again, like you said, how
creepy scene though.
There's no way that a town can have this many different
everyone's
people
weird.
that all live around you.
Yeah.
So that's how you knew that some of this stuff was all being made up by her.
Yeah.
And he said she was in this depression. So which one of the two killed Violett? That's where you're left at. And so as it's all playing out and they're showing Stan show up to basically dig up what you thought was going to be dig up Violett's body. The camera part though is the only part I'm going to say in this movie they still kind of it doesn't make sense because a lot of the stuff was in her head, but she found the camera. Like this guy was in the house.
Well, she lost her memory. She didn't recall that night. Remember?
Maybe she herself.
Yep.
Taped
she had amnesia. After she did what she did to Violett, she lost her mind, and that whole night is completely like suppressed somewhere in her.
Maybe she taped it in there to keep it hidden.
But mind you, how the fuck did that camera just turn on and have battery after all that time? And the guy smashed it with a brick.
Apparently. And it was laying in water.
And it was in water.
He threw it in the water and then threw a brick on it. And Adam's like, she turns it on. He's like, shouldn't that thing be dead?
Oh yeah. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Violett had found this, I guess the skull of a ram. And with Sonya's experience of living on the farm and the trauma that she went through on the farm, with seeing Violett with it, Sonya snaps, tries to take it from her, and it was
because of her father, yeah.
Because of her father. Yeah. And it wasn't she tried to kill her child.
It was an accident, I think.
It was an accident.
Yeah.
And poor Stan covers it all up. I felt so much for Stan's character out of anybody in here. His wife did this. She's now with amnesia, like looking like death. He comes home every day, has to try to live in this world that she has created, and when she goes to, the hospital, comes back, and you're thinking that everything is going to be okay, and they're in the bathtub having their conversation, and he talks about them having a kid. You hear Sonya mention Violett again. I think he did a really good job in that scene in the bathtub.
He did.
Because when he put his head back,
yes,
his heart was broken.
Yeah,
it was literally like he had a glimmer when she came back. They're all lovey-dovey. She's like, again, and I thought about the Babadook because of the color of her skin. With the red around the eyes. Babadook is also, I don't know if it's New Zealand. I know I covered it. My bad. A little buzzed right now. I don't know if it's Australia or New Zealand.
I think it's New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken.
When he had his revelation, and then you had him going and, uncovering the body and then shooting himself, I was like, it still doesn't make any sense. It's not like he was like feeding into her fantasy of the whole thing, and I'm like, it didn't make any sense.
He did it to protect her, but
when she turned on the camera,
it drove her towards insanity. So he was like, the only way to this is it.
When she turned on that camera and it showed that it was her, I'm like,
question for you though. Yeah, question. I have mentioned it was by accident, but what if it wasn't though? Because remember the drawing that she drew in the flashback with her dad. It was her holding a knife with blood on it, or it was a female holding a knife with blood. I assumed it was her. And then at the very last shot, when she looks at the camera and she looks at you, the viewer, it almost cracks like a little grin.
Yeah.
Like, maybe did she have murderous intent? And it's like, it was, because why would they show the picture of her with a little kid drawing a picture of somebody holding a knife? Normally when kids draw that, they don't grow up to be like, stable people. But that's just a question. I don't know. It could go either way. But that little grin
Yeah.
at the end, like it wasn't like a grim of sorrow, more like a grim of like I got away with it. I remember now. Yeah, you know. I don't know. I'm just
No, you could. I see
the
what you're
movie's
saying.
fresh in my mind, so I still don't have time to process everything. This just popped up into my head right now when you mentioned the recorder.
Because she blinked. She said there was something in the house. So then for a moment there, I'm like, all right, so is it a haunted house?
Yeah, because
And
the skull. Remember what the dad said though. The skull had
brings demons.
yes, and if there's demons inside you, the skull will know about it.
Right. So that's where the movie you saw it 2 times. Again, it's one of those.
Well, no, hold
it's-
on. I
it's-
fell
it's-
asleep the first time.
All right,
so.
but still, but when you rewatch,
That's why I saw it twice.
It's still one of those that there's some plot holes. The more cleaner picture is that when Sonya saw the skull, she flashed back to what she went through. She was taking the skull away to get it out of the house because her dad told her it was evil. And then, when she hit her, because that's the whole point, that she hit her with it.
She hit it with it.
So this is where it's confusing,
in
and
the face too.
in the face, it slit her cheek.
Yeah.
So, what was she reacting violently because of the connection of the father and the abuse that she had from the father? You don't know. You mentioned the smile, then you mentioned the demon. The way he would juxtapose the house in angles throughout this movie gave you the feel that there was something evil in the house. So it either the skull brought something evil in the house, or it was an accident that Stan decided to help her with. And when he realized that this bitch ain't coming back, he's like done. Because the thing is, though, how long is he supposed to live with hiding the secret that my wife killed my daughter? She doesn't want to have another kid. So this is the rest of his life. So he shot himself because what's the other choice? To leave.
To him, you're right. Because to him, in order for it to move on, he has to expose Violett, right? Expose her body. Now, she's the one that killed Violett, but he's still trying to protect her. So he ends his life so they could think he did it. Not just that, but the authorities, for example, could see that, and they could put everything to bed. Remember, she's still, in his mind, she's gonna think it was him, and she's not gonna know it was her. But she saw the videotape. Now, why did she kill her to begin with? Because he was like, "Why are you always fucking defying me?" He said it to a little kid, like, "Whoa, this guy's violent." But then that was like out of character in a sense, because he didn't seem aggressive at all throughout.
No, I don't think.
I don't understand that.
I think it was. You only saw that so that way now you're waiting for the next couple scenes to show how Stan had killed her.
I wasn't a fan of that because that's out of character for him.
But it added to now you're wondering. I agree with you, but that's part of Steven, the director, his vision. Which I will also say, I thank us doing Horror Italiano to look for nuances, because it's always in front of there, and that's how I figured out the dinner tables.
For me, it's funny because the very first scene when we meet Stan, we first see him in bed, but when you're at the table eating breakfast or dinner, whatever it was, and she tells him, "Eat your soup," and he just looks at her and he's like, "I'm gonna go for a walk," and he leaves. At that point, I'm thinking it's a legit film and reality, and there really is somebody kidnapping children. So I'm like, he walks away. I'm like, he's a killer. That's him.
It did make him look like he's the one that's been killing these children.
So when everything came full circle, like, oh no, this is not. It's in her head. But wait a minute, he was responsible. I'm half right. But then when they twisted again, no, I was completely wrong. It was fucking Sonya this whole time.
Yeah. Well, he used what was going on with the missing children.
Yeah.
To make it look like Violett was.
But there was no missing children. That's all in her head. Those missing children were never part of that.
No, it was
town.
on the news.
That's in her head. That was never on the news. If you go back and watch, whenever she sees anything like that, she's alone.
All right.
Yeah, so there was never missing children. She just, because she lost her daughter, and in reality, when she's in this catatonic state, now she has this paranoia of losing her child again, so she's fearing everything now. Yeah. But let's wrap it up. Let's close it out. Joe, final thoughts, rate it, and yeah, let's see what you got to say.
All right. Like I was before, right towards the end. The one thing, a lot of colors in the movie, and once you, Horror Italiano has kind of been the blueprint, especially with Suspiria. The colors. You have to know your colors in the movie. So every time we kept seeing different colors, and I'm like, oh, all right. All this cinematography, all these colors are meant for a reason. And again, these are all the puzzles being laid out all in front of you. I think the movie could have probably been hour and 23 minutes.
Yeah, it spent a lot
no
of
more
time
than an
on,
hour and a
like,
half.
Exposition and flashback stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff just to have imagery on there didn't need it. Yeah.
Well, and again, I think the imagery were all meant to paint your whole entire picture. Like to get, it halfway through, I'm like, ugh, it feels very artsy fartsy.
Oh, I said the same thing. I was like, oh god, are they just trying to be fancy just for the sake of being fancy? Like, I like it when movies like Argento, Suspiria, right? It's all the colors, they all tell a story within the movie. Here, with this one scene where it's showing her like in this field and she's black and white, but everything's colored, and I'm like, okay, so hopefully this is gonna make sense to it. Which it's probably, if you look at it back, you look back on it now, maybe it does. But at the time, yeah, I thought like you did, like because this is my first experience to this director. He did mainly short films before this, so I'm like, oh man, is he trying to just look fancy but no substance? We'll see. But it worked out at the end, I think.
I mean, I'd call it art house horror. And I mean,
is this elevated horror? Would you consider this elevated horror?
So here's the thing. What I kind of a little bit consider elevated horror, because it is, you're dealing with a person who has now amnesia from the traumatic event of accidentally or purposely killing her child. Either way, she's just not there. When you watch Lars von Trier is known to have a lot of imageries the same way that Steven had. So I gave it a little respect on, that's what I thought about actually when I was watching it. I went to, the Argento or Italiano, but then because of the actual, a couple of scary scenes that, that you had in there and the imagery you had, I was like, he's a little Lars von Trier.
Good show. Cool. I can see that.
Yeah, like if you like again, like if you look, it's a little, so I didn't hate the movie. I didn't love the movie. I'm trying to think because I'm so stuck in between, and I'm gonna do what some people when they come on hate we do. I'm gonna give this a 3.75, but it should have been shortened down. If it would have been a little bit shortened down, gotten a little bit there, like kind of cleaned up the movie, I would have given this a 4.
Yeah, I agree. Like I mean, when I first watched, I was bored to tears. It's just not my style. It's not. It's just not the kind of movie I would watch over and over again. I say a movie, oh, it's Halloween season. Let me put on Violett. It's not what it is. But
that's not gonna happen.
Putting those biases to the side, though, what we have here is a strong film. It's the acting was really good. I mean, I'm not familiar with any of these actors, but they were good. I mean, her hallucinations with her neighbors were a little over the top, especially the handyman when he's talking to her, eating that chocolate, and the way the camera, like, it looks like they use like a fish lens on him. He's all like distorted. And then, like I said, the painter guy, I wasn't a fan of his performance, but I think the leads of Sonya and Stan and Violett too, I think those three carried the film really strong. And I knew something was wrong when Violett always had that fucking hat on. I mean, why does she always have this hat on? You know what I'm saying?
Which was the hat she had on when she disappeared.
And she usually has the same type of clothing on too. So I knew there was something going on there. But I like how they went back, and every time she was with Violett, they showed you what she was really doing. And I'm not gonna lie, man. Like that reveal broke me a bit, man.
Me too.
I'll be honest. You guessed she was dead the whole time. I didn't even think about that. I didn't. And then when that part came to reveal it, it got me. I was like, damn. Like I went from bored to being like, come on, it's fucking over yet. So when they got to that part, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. And then my ears perked up, like the hairs in the back of my neck stood up. I'm like, oh my God. But then I'm like, there's still like 20 fucking minutes left of this movie. What the hell is going on? I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Same thing.
Yeah, but I do. And then the ending, the final reveal was so heartbreaking. And the fact that Stan was the man the whole time, he was a doctor and he broke some practices just so he could help cover this shit up. And I think he just couldn't live with it. And he said, well, if she's going to move on, I got to do this. And unfortunately, I got to go. You know, he's the martyr in this situation. But overall, the ending made up for it. The ending was beautiful, man. I'm not going to lie. And it just shows you how fractured a person can be by losing a child and how disconnected from reality somebody can become. And that's not a horror film. That's real. And I think the horror in this movie, that's where it comes from, is the mental health aspect of it and the trauma of losing a child and what it could do, or losing anyone that you're close to. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4. This is a 4 for me. I'm gonna give it the extra 25 because of Sonya and Dan and Violett. Their performances, I think, to me, carried the film. And the cinematography was good. Again, it's jarring because some things just pop in, pop out, doesn't make sense. You got to piece it together, and yes, then it'll fit. But as you're watching it, it doesn't make a good experience. It just don't. Until you get to, that's why I say you got to be patient, because you get to the end. As long as you get to the end and you put things together in your mind, like we did, it clicks. Like, oh, right, you know what? This wasn't a waste of an hour and 40 minutes. This was actually a pretty good movie. But is that a film that has no replay value for me? That's my biggest issue with films like this. I just can't watch them like I watched like fucking Hatchet, or if I watched Terrifier, you know, or Wrong Turn or shit like that. So, you know,
I do have one little thing to add, because we're getting right to the end.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Give us our send off. Go ahead.
With her sitting with the camera on her hand after she watches it all, and then she looks up at the camera, you're left wondering, did she hit delete so she can continue on living in her head with Violett? Or is she going to turn this camera over to the police?
So glad you brought. No, she wouldn't turn it over to the police.
She's not. She deleted that fucking shit. That's why, like, Adam goes, because I thought, I'm like, oh, the police are going to see it. Adam goes, she deleted it.
You know why? Because she's like,
she doesn't want to give up.
Not just that though. All right, she deleted it because she goes to the police. Then Dan took his life for nothing. His death was in vain. So he's like, this is what Dan wanted, or Dan, yeah, this is what he wanted.
But see, I think he dug her up so that way she shows up and sees the body.
Yes, but he wasn't expecting her to figure out that, wait a minute, she's the one that did it. He wanted her to think he did it.
Oh, and that's why he destroyed it. Oh my God,
yes,
you're right.
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
so he did want her to see the body.
Yes.
So she could move on, but not show her that it was, oh my God. Okay.
Dude, why do you think when she walked out, you don't think he was going to follow her?
I'll give it a 4.
There you go. It makes sense. I'm telling you, when you put it together, things, it rewards you. This is what I like about the movie. It was a drag to sit through, but they did reward you with some good payoffs at the end. I liked it. So,
JR, did you think we were going to destroy it? You know you did.
Yeah, JR probably thought these fucking grindhouse motherfuckers.
There's no fucking gore in here. These assholes are gonna come in here. No, JR, we liked it.
We enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers, brother. I'll see you on the next one. And with that being said, I'm Ricky Van, Joe the Psychologist. Joe, before we go, what we got coming up next? It's a special Thursday show, Joe. What is it, Joe?
Yeah, make sure to tune in because we're going to have a live stream. It's a full house. We have a new guest joining us, as well as some 2 returning. And we're going to be discussing the 40th anniversary of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So make sure to tune in.
And with that being said, stay good, stay healthy, stay sane, love each other. But most of all, stay scared. Joe, take us home, motherfucker.